Okay, thanks everyone for being here, whether you're watching live or after the fact. I really appreciate it. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes on my channel. Yeah, I've been really busy the past couple weeks. I do home health care. When I'm at work, I'm there 24/7. Um, Someone left the job, so I've been working 80, 90 hours a week and haven't really had time. So I'm going to be making a commitment to be doing at least averaging one video a day and trying to do live streams on Fridays from here on out. So I really thank you for your support, and sorry that I've kind of fallen off the past couple weeks, but I do appreciate everyone's support. The other thing is, and I'll probably mention this again as we're going through this video, there is a chance I'll have to cut off abruptly. I got some people coming that are going to help me put some flooring in, and they have no idea what time they'll be here, so hopefully it'll be after 4 and I'll be finished by then, but you never know. So let's get started. So what we've missed since the couple weeks I've been gone is the big story is still the coup going against Trump. And to me, this continues to be, along with the Epstein story, the biggest story. Quite possibly, I think it's the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. This, not just the coup that we see in the form of the Ukraine gate, but also with the Russia collusion hoax that went on with that. We're literally talking about unelected bureaucrats working with establishment Democrats and some people in the establishment Republican Party to engage in a coup to overthrow a sitting president. A president that was elected on the promise of getting power back into the hands of people and having their votes mean something. Remember, that's what prompted the election of Donald Trump. No matter how big of a Trump fan you are and you think, well, I liked his ideas and his policies on trade, or I liked his bluster and the way he talked back. The big issue was that there was all sorts of animosity from people on the right and the left, contempt for our ruling class because they no longer care about the average American. This was evident in Trump winning, but it was also evident in Bernie Sanders getting so much support. There was sort of a populism that was going on. And part of what Trump said was that there was a swamp. He didn't use the words deep state, but that's what he's referencing. There's basically, you have politicians come and go, but in the reality, there's this deep state behind them that control the show. They never leave. They're there for lifetimes. And a president can come and go for 8 years. So can a congressperson. So can a senator. But these people are the ones that are really calling the shots. That means that me and your vote, and I don't care if you're right wing, left wing, anywhere in between, our vote doesn't matter. We only get to pick from pre-approved people that will listen to these deep state officials. Trump fought back against this. Before he was even sworn in, we saw Chuck Schumer say on Maddow's show that he's a fool to go against the intel communities because they'd find 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at him. That should have terrified every single American, regardless if you love or hate Trump. But, of course, the left didn't care. Most of them. There are a few good ones. Your Jimmy Dores, your Glenn Greenwalds, Michael Tracy, some folks like that. But the majority of them didn't care. They cheered on the very deep state that they protested just 10 years ago when they said, oh, we were lied into the Iraq war by the deep state. And so now they're cheerleaders for these, the deep state officials. They said the deep state didn't exist, which I'll get to a video that I want to talk about. The McLaughlin and Brennan, 2 former CIA directors, not only acknowledging that the deep state exists, but chortling about it and saying, yes, thank God it exists. We need it. They have a higher calling to stop Donald Trump. In other words, what they're saying is unelected officials in the CIA have a higher calling to subvert democracy. Your vote doesn't matter. Now remember, this is like we see what happened with the Democrats often. Remember socialism? Oh, we're not socialists. We're not socialists. We're not socialists. People like me that were like, wow, this is starting to sound like open borders. This is starting to sound like socialism. No. Now they say, of course we're socialists. It's a great thing. Oh, there's no deep state. There's no deep state. You're conspiracy theorists. That's just conspiracy theories that think the deep state real. Fast forward to 3 short years later. Of course the deep state's real. We all knew it. It's a great thing. The deep state's great. We can't trust people to vote. We can't trust their values or their judgment. We have to have unelected officials that usurp rightfully elected democratic leaders. That's necessary. And yes, that means we have to bail out bankers. That means that the wealthy need to continue to get wealthier. That means that we need to erode national borders and have globalism so that they could all continue to increase their wealth and power. That means we need never-ending regime change wars. You know, the stuff that the left used to pretend to be against until their boy Obama started doing it. Now they're bloodthirsty maniacs that can't get enough war. In fact, God forbid Trump tried to pull out of areas. That's terrible. Just ask the fine folks at New York Times or CNN. They'll tell you. We need the never-ending wars. We got to keep them going. That's the people we have to cheer for. That's the same deep state that we have to cheer for. They said it didn't exist 3 years. I mean, how many times can the media lie and the Democrats lie? I mean, they said that Trump was a Russian asset, that the P dossier was real and all that. That was a lie, right? They say every war that we go to, they say it's necessary. Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. They said all those were necessary and it would make us safer. That was a lie. They said if we pulled out of Syria that ISIS would increase in strength. Who knows what will happen, but already Baghdadi's been killed, so that was a lie. They said if Trump got elected, the economy would crash immediately. That was a lie. They just lie over and over, and they're shameless. Their ability to control the narrative means they never have to be held accountable. People just continue to default to them as if they're some sort of authority. They're not. They're not a free press. They're just mouthpieces for the establishment and for the deep state. Primarily the establishment Democratic Party. But there are also never-Trumpers on the Republican Party that fit into that category. But that's what we've been seeing, and it continues on. And it blows my mind, as I'll get to this a little later in my video, but it blows my mind how inept the Republicans are. I look at Republicans in my state. I ran for District 12 of Pennsylvania in a special election and lost to a gentleman named Fred Keller. Kudos to Fred Keller for co-sponsoring the legislation to hold Adam Schiff in contempt and demand that he be transparent in the impeachment inquiry. Glenn Thompson is I'm in District 15. He's my congressman. He also signed on to it. But what else are they doing? That is a defensive posture. That is already giving credence. So what that does is it says, so Pelosi comes out and says, oh, okay, we'll vote an official inquiry. Problem solved. No. The problem is the entire investigation's a sham from the get-go. We've had sham investigations since before Trump even took office. Into Trump, into people connected to him. That are all based on policy differences, and based on the fact that they don't want Trump to uncover their crimes. I'm sick and tired of the Republicans pretending that this charade is legitimate. Oh, well, if they'd just be a little more transparent, then it would be okay. Well, we have to listen to this seriously, these allegations seriously. That's garbage. Now, I'll go through again, which if you've watched my channel, you've heard me talk about what exactly is wrong with the Ukraine situation and how the Democrats once more are accusing Trump of exactly what they have done. Just like with the Russia situation. Just like with obstruction of justice. Just like with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. Just like with the quid pro quo now in Ukraine. These are all things that the Democrats have done. And they realize that what's effective, just like Alinsky says, is accuse your opponent of what you yourself do. They realize that's an effective strategy. They control the narrative. They control all the cultural institutions of power that shape our narrative, which you've heard me say before is the mainstream media, academia, the entertainment industry, and Silicon Valley. They control all of that, and so they set the agenda. So we'll talk about all of that a little more, but where I want to focus today is we now apparently could put a name to who the supposed whistleblower is. Now, take this with a grain of salt because it hasn't been confirmed, but it also hasn't been denied, and we've seen things like this gentleman's lawyer come out, or the whistleblower's lawyer come out and criticize places like Real Clear Investigations that release this information. So it's a man by the name of Ciaramella, which did remind me of the Caramello candy bar, which is what my title of the video is about. But let's talk a little about him. So if you watched Tucker Carlson last night, Tucker does a great job of going exactly through what Ciaramella has done in his past. So this is a 33-year-old Democrat that worked with the Obama administration. He's a holdover from them. He worked closely with John Brennan. He worked closely with Alexandra Chalupa, who was, and that's going to be the important part that I'll get to, but Chalupa was the DNC operative that actually worked with Ukrainians such as Leshenko and the NABU that was releasing the Black Ledger. In other words, they were interfering in our elections. This whistleblower worked directly with the woman from the DNC that was involved in getting foreign help to interfere in our 2016 election. You think that person might have a vested interest in wanting to see Trump not investigate election meddling from Ukraine? When he was working with the very woman from the United States, from the DNC, that was working with the Ukrainians in facilitating them meddling in the 2016 election? But what Tucker says on his program is, even if this isn't the person, what Ciaramella represents is exactly what's wrong with our political system right now. Ciaramella wasn't elected. He's a young man who is an operative for John Brennan, for the Obama administration, who's decided he doesn't like the policies of Donald Trump. This is what we saw with Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Strzok, Page, Baker, Rebecca, all of them. These were all people that didn't like the policies of Donald Trump. Not that thought that he was engaged in unethical behavior. They started on the assumption of, we don't like what Trump's doing, what his foreign policy suggestions are. And so because of that, they decided they needed to take this person out. And we have tons and tons. Like, when people talk about the deep state, they think of it as shadowy men in rooms smoking cigars like Skull and Bones or the Illuminati or something like that. It's not that. Sure, there are people, high officials, that probably engage in communications where they talk about setting their agenda. We have places like Bilderberg. But a lot of what it is, it's not even stated. It's people that think that they're doing the right thing. It's people that have convinced themselves they know better than the American people, that elections don't matter, that they could break and bend the rules if it benefits their agenda because they know more than me and you. Those people never leave office. John Brennan doesn't think he's a bad guy. John Brennan is utterly convinced that not only is he a moral actor, but he's smarter than all those stupid Trump voters. They're all a bunch of racist, ten-toothed, ignorant hicks. They didn't know what they were doing. And so it's John Brennan's job to make sure that the person they put forward, Donald Trump, doesn't investigate the crimes that Brennan and his cohorts have committed and doesn't change the status quo from people like Brennan having the real power in Washington. That's what it's about. Brennan doesn't wake up thinking, well, I'm a terrible person. And there are tons of people under Brennan that are just like that. Just like the Obama administration. How many agencies were corrupted under him? Now, did Obama directly go to the EPA and the IRS and say, I want you to target conservatives? I want you to be biased for me? No, I don't think he did. But he, through his appointees' actions, people like Eric Holder and people that were the head of these agencies, made it quite clear through their actions that it was not only okay and not only acceptable, but was preferable to use their positions to advance their agenda. Fairness be damned. Transparency be damned. The law be damned. They didn't care. That's who Ciaramella is. Now look, there's all sorts of allegations. Well, he worked with Brennan. Well, he worked with the Obama administration. The two big things, though, that you need to know, because it's always better, instead of talking about things in the whole, which I don't mind doing, but if you're trying to tell people why exactly this is so corrupt, it's easy to just break it down into the simplest form. We know through admissions that the Ukraine meddled in the 2016 election. Again, I've showed you the article from the Financial Times in August of 2016, where the Ukrainian politician Leshchenko is admitting that he worked with the NABU, which is basically Ukraine's FBI that was in cohorts, that was basically listening to the Obama administration and burying cases for them. They meddled in the 2016 election. And the reason was they didn't like Trump's suggestion that his policy would be less antagonistic towards Russia. And I'll get to why that's a problem for them. But in other words, they didn't like Trump's policy. That's not illegal for Trump to want to have better relations with Russia. There's nothing illegal about that. Yet the deep state flipped their lid. All of the media flipped out over this. Why is that? Because even Eisenhower told us, the military-industrial complex, the deep state, they need these never-ending wars. They have a vested interest in continuing to be enemies with Russia. They don't want good relations. That's why they're arming groups like Al-Nusra and ISA in Syria to fight pro-Russian interests. Well, wait a minute. Weren't we told that we had to give up our Fourth Amendment rights? We had to give up our right to privacy? You can't go to an airport without getting molested anymore because Islamic terror is the biggest threat ever? Yet somehow the same people that told us that say, oh, and we have to arm Islamic terrorists when it comes to fighting Russia. They have a vested interest in not wanting better relations with Russia. One, because it benefits them greatly financially and politically. But second, because if we have better relations with Russia, then there's a chance that what we've been doing, what the people like Brennan have been doing and arming places like Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda will actually become transparent and made available to the average American. And they'd be outraged. If you lost a family member or a friend, which probably most people in this country have, in the war on terror or in 9/11 or something like that, wouldn't you be outraged to know that our government was arming the very people that your friend or loved one was over there fighting? The weapons that those people were using were facilitated by the U.S. government? Wouldn't that infuriate you? But luckily, under the Obama administration and a compliant media that was just the mouthpiece for him and the establishment Democrats, that was all buried from the average person. They didn't know. Trump threatened to rock that boat. He said in the second debate with Hillary Clinton, which I thought was his best moment in the debates. Why are we fighting Russia and Syria? What's that about again? Shouldn't we be working with Assad and Russia to stop ISIS and stop al-Nusra and al-Qaeda? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean that Assad or Putin are great guys? No. But the Obama administration and every administration previously worked with places like Saudi Arabia and tons of countries that were led by unethical people. That's part of being a politician. That's part of making difficult choices. I don't have a problem with that. All of a sudden, though, when Trump wants to do it, now it's treasonous. Now he has to be removed from office. But the way to break this down is real simple with this Ciaramella. If he's the whistleblower, there are two things worth noting. One, he was basically ousted from a position in 2017 because he was called out by conservatives for leaking and basically being an operative designed to take down Trump. That was in 2017. So this is already someone that we can't trust. And the other thing is, he was working directly with Alexandra Chalupa. Now, these names become confusing. I get that. Who was Chalupa? Well, I already stated earlier. Chalupa was the DNC operative that was going over to the Ukraine, getting dirt on Donald Trump and people in his campaign, which she successfully did. She brought that dirt back, which forced the resignation of Paul Manafort. That dirt was then used by the FBI and by Mueller to continue to go after Trump. And people in Manafort specifically. At the same time this is going on, in August of 2016, Lyshenko and other people, Ukrainian officials, are publicly admitting we were interfering in the 2016 election to take down Donald Trump because we don't like his policies. Let me see if I can bring this article up. But anyways, the woman... Now, remember... let's see if I can find it. Well, I can't find it right now, but I'll see if I can bring it up later. No big deal. But... So, remember, the media, the Democrats, they told us the entire Mueller investigation, the entire FBI investigation that started before Trump was even elected, they said that was necessary because the implication, right, of election interference by a foreign country was so damaging, it's an act of war, is what many said. How can we trust our elections anymore if we have foreign governments interfering? That's what we were told. Therefore, no stone must be left unturned. To this day, they make excuses for the Clinton paid for opposition research dossier that was sourced by Kremlin agents being used as a reason to wiretap people connected to the Trump campaign. They make excuses for that corruption because they say, well, the implications were so severe, we had to do it. We had to because what if the Russians were interfering in the election? And they were, and it's a huge deal. That's what we're told by the left. Meanwhile, we have public admissions, even before the election happened, that Ukraine was interfering in the election. Politico, that's the article everyone talks about, the Politico article in 2017. It talks specifically about how Chalupa was working with Lyshenko and these other people in Ukraine, so facilitating their interference in the 2016 election. That's called a conspiracy theory by Jake Tapper, by all the folks at CNN and the New York Times and MSNBC and the Washington Post, etc., etc. They're all the same. It's admitted. Now, where are they? All of a sudden, they were furious. They thought that it was the biggest deal in the world when it came to election interference from foreign entities that could benefit Trump. But when it was entities that benefited Hillary or that were against Trump, now all of a sudden they have no interest when it's admitted. So the actual agent from the DNC that was over there facilitating this election interference was working with the whistleblower, Ciaramella. So then you hear, remember, Ciaramella, or whoever if he is the whistleblower, but we know this, the whistleblower didn't hear the call himself. He didn't hear the Trump-Zelensky call himself. He just heard secondhand reports of it, which makes the idea that he's a whistleblower a lie. He's a hearsayer, he's a leaker, he's a gossiper. That's what this person is. Remember, don't forget, they changed the regulations. The intelligence community, IG, changed the regulations to allow secondhand information to now be covered as whistleblower protection. Now, what incentive would this person who hates Trump, who was accused of leaking to hurt him in 2017, and who was actually working with the very operative that Trump's suggesting be investigated, do you not think that he would have incentive to have a problem with this? Now, that's 2 investigations at the start of were three actually, were started by absolute partisan scumbags that sought to overthrow Trump in a coup. The first was the FBI investigation into Russia collusion. That was started by Comey, Strzok, Page, McCabe, that crowd. We saw what their texts say. We know what they thought of Trump. Remember, they were giving defensive briefings to Hillary Clinton, saying that the Russians might be trying to influence the election, but for some reason they left that out with Trump. We know from Comey's own memos, from his own testimony, that before Comey went and briefed Trump on the dossier, that he was talking to all the leaders of the FBI, and they were like, oh, try to get dirt on Trump, keep notes. We want to see if he incriminates himself. That means they were trying to get Trump taken out before he even got his presidency started. That was investigation 1. Investigation 2, the Mueller investigation. Rosenstein, who threatened to wear a wire to try to get Trump kicked out of office, recommended that Trump fire Comey, wrote a letter recommending it. When Trump did fire Comey, Rosenstein says, oh my goodness, that's strange that Trump fired Comey. I better appoint a special prosecutor. I know, I'll appoint the very guy that Comey leaked and wanted appointed in the first place, his mentor, Bob Mueller. That's the second start of investigation. Third, now it starts because Schiff met with this guy, this Brennan acolyte, who was working with Alexandra Chalupa, the very person that was facilitating the election interference by the Ukraine. Every single one of these investigations into Trump or people connected to him start on shady circumstances, and then they're just never-ending investigations that there's no rules of. Oh, we can investigate people connected to him from crimes 10 years ago. We could raid their offices in the middle of the night. We'll go to Roger Stone's office while CNN's filming it because they were tipped off with guns drawn, raiding his house in the middle of the night like he's some sort of terrorist. With Ukraine Gate, oh, we'll just subpoena everything and everyone, and as long as if one person says, yeah, I thought that the call was shady, boom, that's reason to impeach. We need to investigate everyone, bring everyone to Capitol Hill. We want to talk to everyone. And what happens in all of these situations? Remember the dossier? Remember, that was the big thing. Oh, the dossier. Oh, the allegations, and those serious allegations, those are worth investigating. Then once it was proved it was paid for, remember, never forget, the DNC and Hillary lied for a year. They said, we had nothing to do with that dossier. Then we find out that was a lie. Yes, they did. And then once it came out that the dossier was crap, and we were able to prove that a lot of it was crap, they just said, it doesn't matter, moving on. Every single thing. Mueller, remember his testimony was going to be the nail in the coffin for Trump. Once it came out that Mueller was a bumbling oaf who didn't even know what his own report said, then it was, that's not important, let's move on to the next thing. That's all this is. It's just more excuses for never-ending investigations. That's it. Now imagine this. Go with the shoe on the other foot test, right? Imagine Trump would say, hey, actually, we're going to investigate Bob Mueller because he's investigating us, right? As soon as Mueller starts his special investigation of Trump, imagine if Trump said, actually, I'm now hiring a special prosecutor to look into Bob Mueller, who's looking into me, because I think Mueller's up to some shady stuff. People would say, that's nuts, that's insane. Or imagine if Paul Manafort became a whistleblower. What, Mueller's looking into me? Actually, Mueller's a shady guy. We need an investigation into Mueller. People would have said, of course Manafort's going to say that. Mueller's investigating him. That's exactly what we see happening in the current situation. Trump's asking Zelensky to investigate 2016 election interference from the Ukrainians in conjunction with the DNC. This guy, Ciaramella, is working with the actual DNC operative that facilitated that election interference. So he says, yeah, I don't like this call. Yeah, you know, if I was a criminal or if I was engaged in foreign election meddling and I found out that someone was going to investigate it, I too would have a problem with that. And remember, Schiff said, oh, we need this whistleblower to testify. Closed door, we can't release his name, but we need the whistleblower to testify. Everyone needs to hear from this person. Now, all of a sudden, once we find out that Schiff lied about meeting with this person, that Schiff's team actually coordinated with this person, that they hired lawyers that were connected to Brennan and to the DNC and Hillary to help write the statement, that they changed the rules to allow this at the last minute, to now allow secondhand knowledge. And now that we're finding out this person had connections to the very DNC operative that was influencing election interference, now all of a sudden, well, we don't need the whistleblower to testify. It's insanity. And look, another theme of this is, and I know people have said this, and it's true, we actually have the transcript. Remember, let me take you back to, I mean, it seems like forever ago, but just, 4 or 5 months ago? When the Mueller report, right before it came out, Barr, right, sends out a memo that's like, here are the conclusions, basically, of the Mueller report. Says, it was a real short statement, right? Says they'd had no findings that Trump or anyone connected to him were involved in Russian collusion in an illegal way, and they could not confirm, they could not prove or disprove that Trump engaged in obstruction of justice. And then 2 weeks later, the Mueller report came out, right? Yet even after the Mueller report came out, the narrative from the media and the Democrats were, Barr's memo was terrible, Barr's memo was terrible, Barr's memo was terrible. Who cares? The Mueller report's out. If it's so damning, if Barr's memo was so terrible, then just show us in the Mueller report what you're referencing. But instead they focused on, well, Barr's summary of that was wrong. Comey, it wasn't wrong, it was right. Everything I just told you is what the Mueller report found. It's just that Mueller had a problem. He didn't like the way the media was spinning it. Remember that? So the media decided to kick it in overdrive at the behest of their deep state masters, because they're just the mouthpieces for it, and started to say, oh, the problem was with Barr's memo. We don't even need to focus on the actual document. Do you realize how stupid this is? In other words, we had a discussion that controlled the national narrative of what people's summary of the Barr report was, while the Barr report was right there. It would be like me saying, well, I know the Star Wars movie sucked because I saw this critic said that the movie sucked, but I'm going to criticize the critic. Dude, just watch the movie. The movie's out. Watch it. Come up with your own opinion of it. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to criticize the critic instead of looking at the movie and giving our own criticism of the movie. It's the exact same thing we see with this Ukraine coup. We see the transcript. Yet they're bringing people up, some that didn't even hear the phone call. Well, what did you think about the allegations? Yeah, I had a problem with it. Oh, okay, well, that's proof. Colonel Vindman says that he had a problem. He thought that it sounded shady. So there it is. That's it. Who cares what Colonel Vindman thought? Why aren't I called to testify? I have opinions as well. Are my opinions any less valuable than Colonel Vindman's? It's absolute insanity. We have to take this guy's word. Why? All the people that were connected, all the relevant people that were involved with the phone call, or that were actually high-level people, like Morrissey, yesterday, what did he say? I think that's how you pronounce Morrison. That's how you pronounce his name, I think. But what did he say? Yeah, there was no quid pro quo. I wasn't worried that there was anything illegal. The transcript was legit. Ukrainian president and the people connected to the Ukrainian president all said, we didn't think there was a quid pro quo. We didn't think there was anything improper. We know for a fact that the decision to withhold aid was made before Trump's phone call. We know that the Ukrainians had no idea during the phone call that the aid was going to be withheld. We know that the aid was eventually given even without an investigation into Biden taking place from the Ukraine. The alleged crime didn't happen, right? The idea is Trump withheld money until they investigated Biden. That never happened. He gave the money without them investigating Biden. The Ukrainians didn't think there was a quid pro quo. They didn't feel that they were being pressured. People connected to Trump said that there was nothing like that going on. It's just like with the Mueller investigation. The idea was that, okay, well, there was no underlying crime. Trump wasn't an agent of Putin, but he obstructed the investigation. But he wasn't even guilty of a crime. It's the same thing here. Yes, the crime didn't happen, but Trump may have thought about it. And yes, we don't have any proof of that. But still, And it's nonsense. They're just going to bring up, now John Bolton. Oh, John Bolton, what's John Bolton going to have to say about it? Who cares? It's nonsense. The transcript's out there. Remember, 3 Democratic senators wrote a letter to the Ukraine in 2018 that was covered by CNN. That letter said, hey, nice economy you got there. Things are looking up for you guys. We've supported you. However, we strongly would discourage you from stopping cooperating, giving evidence to Mueller and his investigation of Trump. The very thing they accused Trump of. That's what these 3 Democratic senators did. What was CNN? You've seen me do the video. Go back and check out my video on it. What was CNN's defense of that? Well, there wasn't actually a quid pro quo given. You'd have to read between the lines, which would be incorrect to do so. Yet that's exactly what they do with Trump. And no one that's interviewed in CNN, and not even the good people like Gates and Jordan, why aren't they reading CNN's defense of that and all the media's defense of those 3 Democratic senators and saying, this is what you said about those senators? So why is the standard different with Trump? And that gets me to my next point. The Republicans are pathetic. Yes, there are some good ones out there. But all they know how to do is play defense. They've lost the culture and the information war so bad that all they do is continually respond to what the Democrats say. Like, let me give you a non-Trump related reason. There was a shooting in Texas A&M this week, I believe. And I saw it started to get reporting, and it's terrible. No matter what the situation is, anyone losing their life by a maniac, whatever weapon he's using, is a terrible thing. So a college shooting where I think 2 died, 14 injured perhaps. Seems like the story the media would be covering, right? They're going to use it to their chin. Well, it looks like it was a Hispanic gentleman that did it. So all of a sudden they have no interest. Or you have all the shootings that occur in Chicago or Baltimore. Well, that's black on black crime. They have no interest. We saw the Project Veritas video where the people at CNN, the one producer, admits that. Yeah, we don't care. We don't care about black on black crime. We only care about it if it could be used to suit our narrative, our agenda. Where are the Republicans on the offense of this shooting that happened in Texas A&M? They totally allow, the next time that there's a shooting that could be blamed on a group that the media or the Democrats hate, the Republicans will use this as defense. But they're never out there proactively being offensive, saying, this is how scumbags operate. This is how the DNC and the media are total liars. They're just political agents. That's all they are. They don't care about shootings at all. Now, take that to the political realm. The more political realm, when we're talking about impeachments and stuff. What's been the Republicans? What was their big unifying point? Oh, we're going to condemn Schiff and say that this needs to be more transparent. Sure, that needs to be done. But that is a defensive measure. I've seen Republican after Republican trip over themselves to try to be, oh, well, we'll hear out the investigation and see what's happening. If there was a quid pro quo offered, that'd be bad. No, it wouldn't. Why is it that someone like me, who's working 90 hours a week, that has no background in politics, that's not wealthy, that has no connections, that doesn't have any inside sources, why can I defend Trump and be against this coup better than them? It's ridiculous. So what would I say? What's the first thing? 1, they need to be saying this. All of this is a cover-up to cover up the Democrat crimes. The crimes of the Obama administration, of Joe Biden, of the DNC and the Hillary camp that were working with Ukrainians to interfere in the 2016 election. We are demanding a robust as the Mueller investigation. We want a special prosecutor, a special counselor looking into Ukrainian interference in the 2016 election. We are immediately kicking down the doors of people like Alexandra Chalupa, of people like that were connected to the DNC that were involved in this. We're demanding subpoenas and we're issuing warrants for people like Lyshenko in the Ukraine. That's election interference. And if you don't like it, then you're a pro-Ukrainian stooge. You don't like democracy, and you're for election interference. That's what every single one of them should be saying. They should have it tattooed in their arm, the Politico and the Financial Times articles. Ukrainians admit to interfering in the 2016 election for Hillary. They shouldn't give one interview where that isn't the first thing they're talking about. And the media lies. When they say, oh no, that's not true, it's a lie. The mainstream media reported it. I saw on Twitter today, I saw a blue check mark saying this, going back and forth with a Trump blue check mark. I think Cheryl Atkinson's was the Trump supporting blue check mark. And she's like, look, it's not a conspiracy theory. Here's Politico reporting Alexandros Chalupa's name, reporting that the Ukrainians interfered in the 2016 election. Here's Politico reporting that. And the person she's arguing with, the pro-deep state person, goes, yeah, the difference is Politico's not not conspiracy theorists like Trump. How is that responsive to the allegation? You're right. Politico isn't a weird conspiracy theorist. They're reporting the truth. They're a mainstream outlet. By no means are they right-wing. They reported this in 2017. The Financial Times reported that the Ukrainians were admitting it in 2016, that they interfered in the election to help Hillary. The media just ignores it. And the Republicans let them get away with it. Second, they should be talking about the Democratic senators, Durbin, Leahy, Menendez, that sent the letter to the Ukraine, doing the exact same thing that Trump's accused of. Again, my stance is, I don't think that those Democratic senators did anything illegal. But there were no investigations of them. No one batted an eye. And it's the exact same situation. You would have to read between the lines to think that either they or Trump were engaged in some sort of illegitimate quid pro quo. But the fact that the media is willing to look at Trump and say, yes, we could read between the lines and see this, but with the Democrats, senators, they say, oh no, those are good people, so that surely it can't be as it seemed. Third, regarding Biden specifically, what is the job of the President of the United States? What's the job of the executive branch? You remember this from your basic civics class in high school? Legislative writes the law. Judicial interprets the law. What's the executive? Enforcing the law, right? That's the idea of the executive branch. You tell me, if we have an executive branch that is seeking to enforce the laws of the United States, what is more important than the executive branch looking into the misuse of $1 billion of your taxpayer dollars by a former high-ranking executive official who used an admitted quid pro quo with $1 billion of your taxpayer dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor who just happened to be looking into his son? What's more pressing for the executive branch to be investigating than that? Now, I was told when it came to Trump's finances, and anything that has to do with Trump, you remember there have been stories upon stories of, oh, the curtains, the $30,000 in curtains spent by people in Trump administration, oh, misuse of taxpayer funds from the Trump administration. They seem to be very concerned when it's Trump. When it was Joe Biden, when it was the Obama administration, the media and the Democrats weren't concerned at all. No need for an investigation. That's totally legit. $1 billion of your tax dollars. Again, the specifics don't matter to the big narrative. The big narrative is this. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, etc. You're socialist, you're capitalist. If you were a member, a high-ranking executive official, a member of the executive branch, and you use large sums of taxpayer money to facilitate the firing of a prosecutor who is looking into a member of your family, there should be an investigation, period. I don't care if your name's Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton. It doesn't matter. If we can't agree on that as Americans, we're doomed. If you can twist in your head why it was okay to not even have an investigation, I'm not saying that you have to think Biden's guilty. I'm just saying that's reason for an investigation. If you can twist your head to say, no, there's no need for an investigation, whether it be a legitimate legal investigation through the U.S. government or even a media investigation. We don't need either of those. I trust Biden wholeheartedly. I trust him when he used that $1 billion in an admitted quid pro quo to get the prosecutor looking into his son fired. I trust him implicitly. No need for any investigation. That is absurd. If you think that, if you're the type of person that believes that, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror because you are partisan beyond belief. Joe Biden himself, even if he's innocent, even if his firing, wanting this prosecutor fired, had nothing to do with his son, even if that's true, he should admit, I could see that the optics were bad. Therefore, I'm innocent. Go ahead and investigate. But he didn't. Instead, they said Trump trying to have that investigation was reason to impeach him. And if you're a media person or if you're just someone like me or you that has questions about that, then you're a conspiracy theorist loser. Funny, Biden since came out and said, if I'm elected president, Hunter won't be involved in things like this again. My family won't be involved. Well, why not if nothing was done wrong? Now, that's before we even get to the evidence, which we have compelling evidence. Why aren't the Republicans out there making this case so clear? Instead, they're like, well, it's a witch hunt. It's not transparent. Yes, those are all good arguments, but they're secondary. If there was a reason for an investigation, there is no case for impeachment of Donald Trump. We can still impeach Obama even though he's not president. Should he be impeached because he sought to work with foreign governments to get information on possible crimes that Trump committed? We know that his FBI did that. Where's the media saying that this is outrageous? Well, it was a big deal to look into those crimes. The stakes were high. If Trump committed those crimes, it would have been a big deal. Right? That's what they told you. But not with Biden. Not with $1 billion tax dollars. Now, the specific evidence that could be used to back that's the big narrative. I don't care Republican or Democrat. There needs to be an investigation. If there needs to be an investigation, Trump did nothing wrong. Period. He didn't do anything different than Obama. Now, let's look at the more specifics. It's not just a quid pro quo that's illegal. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping that they can say that. But remember, Schiff and Pelosi have both said, no, a quid pro quo is not necessary for this to be impeachable. Just asking a foreign government for evidence of crimes of someone in the opposite political party of you is reason to impeach. Well, we know Obama did that. Well, that was different, they say. Why? We know that Adam Schiff himself did that. We know that he thought he was talking to Russians trying to get dirt on Trump. We know that Alexandra Chalupa did that. We know that the Hillary and DNC did that through Fusion GPS that hired a foreign spy to get dirt on Trump. I'm painted, and Trump supporters are painted as we're somehow partisan, irrational people. That will defend Trump no matter what. That's not true. One, I criticize Trump all the time when he does things I don't like. But second, I've said from the outset, if Trump committed crimes or people around his orbit committed crimes, hold them accountable. I'm perfectly fine with that. The problem is, all I ask for is an equal application of the law. In every single instance, we see that people connected to Trump or Trump himself that are accused or charged with crimes, we know that the exact same crimes were committed by people in the DNC or the intelligence community, either as bad or worse. Go ahead, take any example. FARA violations. Well, Manafort didn't register as a foreign lobbyist and he worked with pro-Russian Ukrainians, Yanukovych, lobbying for them. Who did he work with? Oh, the Podesta Group. Manafort sits in solitary confinement. Podesta Group gets to retroactively file paperwork. Lying to the FBI. Flynn, who didn't actually lie, as we're going to see more and more comes out. He gets charged. People like people like Hillary, Mills, Aberdeen, no charges. Lying to Congress. Brennan, people like that, not charged. What's his name? Trump's former lawyer, he's charged. Michael Cohen. And on and on. That's what we see happen. It's the same here. They want to impeach Trump for something that Obama did, that the intel agency did, looking to foreign countries for possible evidence of corruption. I mean, who was it that, what is now the narrative on how the entire Russia investigation started? Remember? An Australian diplomat named Downer that was facilitated donations to the Clinton Foundation. Heard George Papadopoulos drunkenly say, I heard that Russians have emails on Hillary. And so they worked with the Australian, they contacted the Australian government, or they contacted Australian officials to get this dirt on Trump, evidence of crimes on Trump. Why was that legitimate? That was okay, apparently. Now we see all the specifics, right, of the actual specific evidence that it wasn't as if the media and the Democrats and Biden are saying that there was nothing to this. We have Shokin, the prosecutor that was fired, admitting, hey, in sworn testimony, under penalty of perjury, I was forced out because I was investigating Joe Biden's son and the company Burisma. We have, and I know, that's just blown off as, oh, Shokin's corrupt. We have the lawyers for Burisma. Remember, Hunter Biden's company. We have those lawyers saying, we know Joe Biden was full of it. They don't use Joe's name, but they say, we know the U.S. officials saying that Shokin was corrupt are full of it. We know that he actually was actively looking into us. What incentive? I still haven't heard anyone respond to that. It's been, what, a month and a half? Has anyone responded to that? John Solomon that reported that, that's a bombshell. The defense attorneys for Hunter Biden, in effect, his company, saying, yeah, we know that Shokin, the prior prosecutor, wasn't corrupt. He was looking into us. That means, and they said, and we know the U.S. officials that said that he were lying. They were spreading disinformation. That completely destroys Joe Biden's entire narrative. That's not corrupt Ukrainians saying that. That's not pro-Trump loyalists saying that. That is the defense attorneys for Hunter Biden's sons, or for Hunter Biden's company. What's been the response from the media to that? Oh, John Solomon that reported that's a conspiracy theorist. He's a bad dude. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Why isn't every single Republican out there saying, look, you can say Shokin's corrupt, but what about the defense attorneys for Hunter Biden? Because they said Shokin wasn't corrupt. They said that the U.S. officials like Joe Biden that said he was corrupt were wrong. They were spreading disinformation. Now, why won't you... we can't listen to them either. Where are the Republicans on this? Where's my congressperson on that? Nowhere to be found. That's where. Perfectly content to just keep their jobs. Whatever. Come what may. All's mostly 90% of these politicians, even the Republicans, all they're doing is trying to navigate, how can we get through this situation, make sure we're elected again? While a coup goes on. Well, the most obvious, the one chance we have, maybe in my entire lifetime, to actually try to take some power away from the unelected bureaucrats that actually run this country, the most vulnerable they've ever been, like or hate Trump. That's the truth. That's what his election's done. And where are the Republicans? Other than a select few? Twiddling their thumbs. That's where. But I should get out there, right? I'm a Republican. I should be out there putting up yard signs. I should be out there encouraging people to register to vote for Republicans. Why? Because the other side's so impalpable? That's my only incentive? When the chips were down, when the corruption was most blatant, where were they? Now, just for a second, I want to talk about, because I had someone ask me, what was the $1 billion about in the first place? Why is this coup occurring? And there's a lot of good reasons. One, there's the idea that Donald Trump, and this is the base level, the biggest picture I could look at, the most, the biggest eye in the sky picture. Donald Trump and to a lesser degree Bernie Sanders both represented potential outsiders to the deep state, to the establishment. That doesn't mean that either would have been antagonistic to the establishment. But they had the potential to be. If it was Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, sweet. The deep state, the establishment got both of them in their pockets. Cool. They don't care who wins between those two. At least 4 more years of no worries, we'll run the show, no one's going to rock the boat. But both with Bernie and Trump, they didn't have that. Trump's election to them signified their first non-monopoly on power. He was a wild card. This is someone who we don't know if we could control. You can't buy him off. He's already a billionaire. He's out there saying things like, I don't trust the intel agencies. Why are we not cooperating with Russia to fight Al-Qaeda? Well, that's a big no-no. Those are things the establishment needs. So this $1 billion specifically, what was the situation in Ukraine, right? Yukounovich was the president of the Ukraine. I'm not, and here's a fallacy that people will make over and over again when you criticize or point out these things. They'll say, oh, clearly I'm a Yukounovich supporter because I'm going to say the following. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm sure he was as corrupt as anyone. But he was kind of a president of the Ukraine who was trying to have good relationships with Russia. Rather, how corrupt that was, I don't know. Then there was a coup and he was overthrown. I have no doubt, as I've seen evidence to the case, and just intuitively, you know, the United States was backing that coup and helped facilitate it. This was a key ally of Russia. This is a good way to encircle them. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like, wait, where have I heard this again? And this is something, you know, people that aren't really as vested in politics as me, this is something I talk about often. I'm a huge fan of like the 80s, 90s action movies. Go back and watch the movie Rambo 3. Okay? Rambo 3, let me just give you the plot if you haven't seen it in a nutshell. Rambo's, I think, in Thailand, and he's just kind of given up being a soldier, and his former colonel comes and says, Rambo, I'm going to help the noble people of Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. You should come with me. And Rambo's like, nah, I'm done fighting. And so the colonel goes, and he gets captured by the Russians, and so Rambo goes, and he helps the noble Afghanis fight the Soviet Union and frees the colonel. And there's a scene where he's talking to all these guys in turbans, and they're in their little village, and the Russians, the Soviets attack them with a copter, and they're on horses with far less superior weapons, and they're fighting the Soviets. And then they're all sitting around in this tent, and there's this scene where the head Afghani's like, you know, for thousands of years, people have tried to conquer Afghanistan, but we're a proud, noble people. No one will take us out. Do you know who those people are? That's the Taliban. That happened in real life, not the Rambo part. But we sent military aid, people to train the Afghanis, the Taliban, to then go in to Soviet Union and launch terror attacks. And Russia called us out at the time, the Soviet Union, I mean. They said, this is being propped up by the United States. No, it's not, said the U.S. We later admitted, in the 90s, we admitted, of course we did that, yes. It's the exact same thing here in the Ukraine. We facilitated this coup. Now, sure, there are bad and good people, I'm assuming, on both sides of the coup. I'm not making a value judgment on that. So then, the new government's in place. But they're not functional. There's all sorts of corruption. It's a destabilized place. Anytime you have a violent overthrow of the sitting government, there's going to be a lot of, vulnerability in the near future for that new government. So $1 billion would help them quite a bit, wouldn't it? That's what the $1 billion was. Poroshenko, the basic puppet that we helped put in, that was a pro-Obama puppet, he ain't going to bite the hand that feeds him. He needs that $1 billion. Right? That's what Shokin, the fire prosecutor, testified to. He said, Shokin, resign. Poroshenko said this. Shokin, you need to resign for the good of your country. Our country needs this money. Now, what's Obama? What's the U.S. and the Obama administration and Joe Biden? What do they get out of this? Many things. One, we know that geopolitically, this gives them a foothold, a stronghold into what used to be an ally of Russia. It's now a foothold against them. That's what you could consider a possible legitimate reason. But what else goes on there? Well, we see through testimony, Lutsenko, the prosecutor that took over, not to be confused with Leshchenko. Leshchenko was the Ukrainian politician that admitted to actively interfering to help the Democrats. Lutsenko was the prosecutor that took over for Shokin. Lutsenko admitted that he was basically being told by the ambassador, Obama's ambassador, Hey, here's people that you can't prosecute, people that are connected to the Democrats, people that are connected to Obama. You can't go after them. You can't prosecute them. People connected to George Soros. And so what Obama's getting is, he's getting the fact that they could now actively meddle in Ukraine, and they're controlling the legal system in Ukraine. And basically the entire government system, because they're financing it. But what else is going on? We see that then these same politicians can personally enrich themselves. And it's not just Ukraine. Why is it that what is all of this foreign meddling, all these regime change wars about? What's going on? Why is this occurring over and over again? What's reasons like I just said, but it's also that it personally enriches, because you might have active connections to, yeah, nice to see you, Rational. You might have action connections to people involved in the military-industrial complex, or defense contractors, or contractors like Halliburton. And so you, as a politician who's voting for this, you personally get wealthy. But there's more than that. There's the ability to wash this money. Have you ever asked yourself, how can people like Nancy Pelosi, that's making what, $250,000 a year at the most? Yeah, nice to see you, Deb. How is it that they're leaving office, or they're in office worth hundreds of millions now? Are they just that shrewd in the stock market? Of course not. They're getting all sorts of kickbacks. And what better way to wash money than to send billions of dollars to, let's say, the Ukraine's gas industry? Give all sorts of subsidies and loans to that industry, and then have your family members be on the board, and in return get millions of dollars back. Do you see how the scheme works? That's what's going on. Now, why do they hate Trump? Well, they hate Trump for one, the big picture reason that I already said, that he potentially could rock the boat on their control, of the deep state's control of all this. And look, there was a guy on Tucker last night who was fantastic that was talking about this. It's just a 3-minute clip. It was at the beginning of his show. He's saying, look, the problem is these deep state officials have entrenched themselves in Washington and have for 100 years been running the show. More and more every year. And along comes Trump. There's someone that says this isn't right. The people's voice and their vote should matter. They didn't like that. So that's why they're fighting so hard. But also on the specifics, they know that Trump weathered their first storm. Right? And this is true. We often see this. And, I mean, this metaphor applies to politics, it applies to sports. Like, if I like watching hockey, or maybe your sport's football, whatever. Basketball could be the same thing. You'll see someone commit a foul or, a penalty or something. And oftentimes they get away with it. It's the reaction. Right? The person who retaliates back against that ends up getting caught. Well, that's similar to the idea of, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up that oftentimes what's worse, or what gets you caught. So their fear of what a Trump presidency potentially could be caused them to basically engage in a coup from the outset. And now, Trump weathered that storm. Who knows if Trump would have been actively investigating Ukrainian meddling and Joe Biden and things like that if this coup hadn't gone against him in the first place. If the media had given him a fair shake, if the Democrats had given him a fair shake, the intel community had given him a fair shake, who knows if any of this would have happened. But at this point, Trump witnessed the corruption firsthand for the first 3 years of his presidency. And so he says, okay, if that's how the game's played, we're going to look into your corruption. Now, you could tell that Trump was over the target, because as soon as he started talking, as soon as the IG report's going to be coming out, as soon as we started to find out that the Durham investigation is now a criminal investigation, and as soon as Trump started to actively look in and to have his people, such as Giuliani, Barr, other people start to actively look into the Ukrainian meddling, all of a sudden the knives came out. And it is a smooth running machine. They're incompetent in many ways because of their hubris, but the Democrats, the media, the intel agency, and the never-Trumpers, in the entertainment industry, in academia, in Silicon Valley. They're all coordinated. The talking points are out. Bam! Hit him with this, hit him with this. No, Joe Biden did nothing wrong. Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. It's all been debunked. It's a lie. Anyone who reported against it's a conspiracy theory. Trump's criminal. It's a quid pro quo. It's a crime. It's a crime. The walls are closing in every day. Places that you thought you wouldn't see it. The Drudge Report. Every day. Chris Wallace at Fox. Every day. This is it. Napolitano at Fox. Of course you knew the media and the Dems would be doing this. It's a constant drumbeat. They're telling the average American that's not as well informed. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm better than them, I'm more informed. They have jobs. They have lives. They're trying to get by. We have real problems in this country. All they know is a little what seeps in from the public discourse. And all the discourse is guilty, 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 guilty. Impeach, impeach, impeach. Because it's the last straw. They have to, or their crimes will be exposed. Get rid of this guy, even if they don't get rid of him. You already saw. I said this is a huge distraction from the Durham and the IG report. Now you already see, oh, Durham's a bad guy. Barr's a bad guy. The IG must be bad. Oh, the IG report's coming out. That's just a distraction from impeachment. But we knew the IG report was supposed to be out before talk of impeachment ever began. It's just been delayed over and over again. But that's how they'll spin it. If Durham, and by the way, let me just say here, I'm pessimistic that anyone, that even Durham will charge anyone with a crime. I mean, we have Brennan dead to rights lying to Congress. Has he been charged? We have Mills and Aberdeen lying to the FBI. Have they been charged? We have all sorts of proof of corruption. Comey lied. Comey lied about who he released the stuff to in Congress. I did videos on that. Has he been charged? So I have no faith that anyone will actually be charged. Because the people around Trump are stupid. And they think, well, if we just tell the public, you know, these were the crimes, but we're not going to charge them, that'll be enough. No, it won't. Look what happened with Comey. The IG report was devastating to Comey. He should be hanging his head in shame. Instead, he's out there celebrating. Because the media is running interference for him. So's academia. So's the entertainment industry. So's Silicon Valley. So he's actually, when the report comes out, he's mocking people. I told you nothing would happen to me. And he's right. He had every right to mock people. We're in a lot of trouble. If these people aren't held accountable, it is literally the end of our country. This is the only shot. If they could be this transparent in their coup attempt and get away with it, and no one be held accountable, that's it. That's the end of the country. They're not going to become less transparent about it in the future. They're going to be more emboldened. And you know what frightens me? It's not Jake Tapper or the New York Times or Pelosi or Schumer. We knew what they were. It's people that I know are good people that are my friends that happen to be Democrats. Now look, this separates me from a lot of Trump supporters. I think that the Trump supporters that feel this way are wrong. I think that you could be a good person and dislike Trump and hate him. That's fine. We can have our differences. No problem. There are things I don't like about him. Debt spiraling out of control. The fact that he bombed Syria. You know, going on Twitter after people like Rosie O'Donnell and stuff. That's stupid. But when I see these people that because of their hatred of Trump, that I know are good people, that are my friends, that I've known for some cases 10, 15 years of my life, when I watch them cheer for the deep state coup, that's how I know we're in a lot of trouble. Not CNN, not the New York Times. They're always going to cheer for it. They suck. But the average people, it used to be we can have disagreements. You're Democrat, I'm Republican, you chuckle about it. And I'm still like that with my friends. But the fact that they cheer this on, it's mind-boggling. Or they don't think it's a big deal. They're like, eh. And then you watch them with Tulsi. Almost all of them support Tulsi. Oh my God, can you believe what they're doing to Tulsi? Which I'll still defend Tulsi from the attacks she's receiving. But by the way, that's karma. Didn't she? What did I say for weeks? I've been saying. She's a hypocrite. Go to my Twitter feed. She's a hypocrite. She was for an investigation into Kavanaugh based on the exact type same of media smears and lies with no evidence. She's for an impeachment inquiry of Trump based on the exact same attacks that she's receiving. She's a hypocrite. She had a chance to stand up and be something special. She might not have she would have and still will continue to get screwed over by the Democrats in the 2020 election. But by the time 2024 came around, here would have been someone who had their credibility, that was right about all the fear-mongering, the red scaring, everyone that disagrees with us is connected to Russia. And they even stood up for her ideological opponent, Trump, and said those smears on him are illegitimate as well. But instead, she sold out. I mean, I don't know how it could be more obvious. And I mean, so many people at my level, and by my level, I mean, we're not DC insiders, we're not extremely wealthy, we don't have access to information other than what we could be gained based on just reading. There's so many people on my level that I think are just in a bubble and think, yeah, Trump's so bad, and so they're on Twitter and they're only hearing from the media people and the entertainment people and the academia people that hate Trump. And so they believe Trump is guilty and Trump did something unique and something that was a threat to our republic. They're wrong. But the people at the higher levels, the media people, the people in academia, the people, the entertainment industry, whatever. Those people, they know they're lying. They know it. They know those 3 Democratic senators did exactly what they're accusing Trump of, and they didn't have a problem with it. They know without a damn doubt that if Trump used $1 billion of your tax money to force a foreign government to fire a prosecutor that was looking into his family, they would go berserk. They know it, and you know it. Everybody knows it deep down, but they lie so often. They don't even know who they are anymore. They're starting to believe the lie. And this is where we're at. We have to take this seriously. And we don't have anyone on the Republican side that's capable of fighting back, that's capable of making an impassioned defense of how insane this is. A small handful of people. I ran as a Republican for Congress, and I'm considering running again. I don't have the money or the resources or the connections, and I'm basically told by people involved in the actual Republican system, wait your turn, do this, hand out signs for us, have voting drives, do this and that. Why? Why should I be concerned with them anymore? It doesn't even matter that I support the president. That's irrelevant. I do, but that's irrelevant. What matters is there's a coup right now that's been going on for 3 years, and these people are sitting around with their thumb in their mouth saying, I guess I have to say something because I want to get reelected, but I'm not going to do anything of substance. Why am I reading Flynn's 302s? Where were my congressmen reading them 7 months ago saying that it was illegitimate that he was charged? Where were my congresspeople when it became obvious that the number one election interference from Russia was the Steele dossier? Who was it sourced by again? Kremlin officials. Yet Bob Mueller says that it was out of his jurisdiction to look into that Russian election interference. Where were my congresspeople there? Jim Jordan said something, that was it. Where were all my Pennsylvania Republicans? But I need to shut my mouth and support them. Well, I'm getting fed up with it. And if they don't start to do something, then I will run against them. And I know it's going to be an uphill battle. I don't have the money or the establishment behind me like them. But average people, I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats, are fed up with this crap. They talk about how unpopular Trump is. Why don't we take up, how popular is the media? How popular is Congress right now? Way worse than Trump. And their groups are controlling the polls. Which I don't trust anyways. We have real problems in this country. I live in rural Pennsylvania. I graduated high school in 2002. I can't believe how many people you hear dying of overdoses now in my area of the world. You know, in the little town, I went to Clarion University. In that little town, the number one employer was a glass manufacturer. They're out of business. Things have been doing a little better since Trump was elected, but there are real significant problems. And what are we focusing on? What are the people supposed to be writing our laws doing? And again, I say this all the time. You hear the media saying, oh, we're so special. The media is so important to a democracy. We're the voice of the people. We hold truth to power. And all that's true. The media is that important. We don't have one. The best we have are online people. What's my reach? 10 people? 15? Most people are sick and tired of the media. They might watch the local news, but they're tired of hearing from them. But it's everywhere. You can't watch a movie without it being thrown in your face, without the actors and the actresses talking about it. You can't turn on a late night comedy show without it being thrown in your face. You can't watch a sporting event. And what do the Republicans do? Nothing. So it's absolutely infuriating. You know, I go back and forth. I'm definitely going to run in 2022. I go back and forth about running in 2020. I don't know if I have enough time. I'd have to collect signatures. I'd have to get donations. And it all starts in February. I have a life. I can't even find time to make videos most weeks because I'm working 90 hours a week. I mean, it's unbelievably infuriating. I mentioned this briefly, but did you see the clip of Brennan and McLaughlin, I think's his name, the former heads of the CIA? They're asked, what do you think about the fact that we see that these CIA agents, they're the ones supposed whistleblowers, and that feeds into Donald Trump's narrative about the deep state? McLaughlin says, thank God for the deep state. They have a higher power, or a higher calling. Stopping Trump. What's he really saying? One, I already said this earlier, but weren't we told the deep state we were all conspiracy theorists that believed in that? This is constantly the case with the establishment, particularly the establishment left. They constantly do stuff, and then you can see where it's heading. Oh, you want to get rid of assault rifles? This is just an assault on the Second Amendment. Soon you'll be saying to get rid of all these guns. Or soon you'll be saying that you're going to confiscate them. No, we'd never say that. Fast forward 2 years. Yep, that's exactly what we're saying. Oh, it looks like you're making policies that could basically be open border policies. Oh, we'd never be for open borders. Fast forward 2 years later. Yep, that's exactly what we're saying. Hey, it looks like you're advocating for socialism. No, we're not socialism. Fast forward 2 years later. Of course we're socialists. Socialists are great. There's no deep state. That you're conspiracy theories if you believe it. Fast forward 2 years later. Of course the deep state's real. It's a great thing. But people like me, and I'm sure a lot of you watching, I'm not special. We had problems with this. We talked about it. You know, unelected officials, the deep state, the establishment, whatever you want to call, we were laughed at. Then once it's too late, of course those people were right. Of course Rob was right about this. He was just wrong that it's a bad thing. It's the same with globalism. You don't have to be a genius to figure this stuff out. Isn't it just coincidental that every time there's an election that occurs that's for the globalists, that election stands up? And remember, oh, if Trump loses, oh my God, he might challenge the election. Do you know how bad that'll be for this country? Oh, the EU had votes up. We got to go with the EU. We got to go with the globalist agenda. And then every time there's an election that goes against the globalist agenda, like Trump, oh, it was a stolen election. Or like Brexit, oh, no, we can't enforce that. Or the Lisbon Treaty. Well, we need to have more votes until we get it the way we want. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Then when I talk about the dangers of globalism and how undemocratic it is, oh, I'm a conspiracy theorist. What am I talking about? You know, when I told people the reason I was voting for Trump was because I thought here was someone who would out the deep state corruption. I actually had a friend tell me, like, well, it's not that I disagree with you, but could you use a different word? Because you just sound like a tinfoil hat wearing maniac when you say deep state. But it's cool when Brennan, the former heads of the CIA, talk about it, right? I mean, it's incredible. The coup against Trump's quite possibly the biggest story. It's the biggest political scandal in my lifetime, possibly in the history of the country. I've been talking about this since 2017. To me, it was real simple. If paid opposition research from the Democrats were used to spy on a presidential contender that was of the opposite party, that's the biggest political conspiracy in the history of our country. We've learned so much more since then. I was told back then, I could bring up the websites I was on posting about this. I could bring it up. People saying, that's not true. You have no proof that happened. Oh, if. Yeah, you have no proof that anything happened. Now I have those same people tell me, of course it happened. It's a great thing that it happened. Trump's so illegitimate, it had to happen. On and on and on. It's mind-blowing to me. And so every day it gets a little more corruption's outed, and it's like the boiling frog theory. The deep state loves it. Of course they were frightened at first, and there's still a chance that something might happen to them. I'm hoping, but I'm pessimistic. But meanwhile, they can't believe their luck. Let's use an analogous situation real quick. Why does Nancy Pelosi dislike Ocasio-Cortez? Is it because they disagree on policies? No, that's not it at all. Pelosi is as radical as AOC. The problem is, Pelosi thought, we can't be transparent with this. Let me take this real quick. Hello? Who's this? Nothing. Pelosi was upset with AOC because AOC let the cat out of the bag too soon. So you got to incrementally strip people's rights away. Incrementally go after their Second Amendment. Incrementally go after their First Amendment and their Fourth Amendment. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, by the way, no more free speech. By the way, no more guns. Pelosi's not less extreme. She's just more politically shrewd. And so when she sees AOC, her beef with AOC isn't, my God, you believe in dangerous things. Her beef with AOC is, stop telling people what we really believe. That's what's going on. Remember, we had Pelosi tell us, well, I'm against impeachment. I'm against an impeachment inquiry until there's bipartisan support. Did you see the vote? How many Republicans voted for it? 0. It's a boiling frog. They know. You just got to do it slowly. That's how the deep state feels. Every year they get more and more control. Every year, you, the average American, I don't care if you're left-leaning or right-winging, Democrat-supporting Republican, you matter less and less. Every year, American exceptionalism is ruined. The wealth of this country is given to corporations and globalist interests. Every year, more and more. Your voice means less and less. It's a slow process. Now, all of a sudden, Trump gets elected, it could be outed, so they have to go, they have to throw the Hail Mary pass, and the deep state's got to be sitting there thinking like, dude, are you kidding me? We got this in the bag. All of this stuff is out in the oven. We got this guy, this whistleblower, that actually worked with Schiff's office. We have Schiff and the whistleblower lying about it. We literally changed the regulations to allow secondhand information the day the whistleblower filed his report. Just to allow this one specific report. We literally did that, changed it that day. And the average American, we control the narrative so much the average American isn't screaming foul about it. Fantastic. Comey can celebrate. One of our members, Comey, deep state general, he gets to celebrate when the IG talks about how corrupt he was. He's on Twitter laughing at everyone. Still doing speaking tours, still selling books. Podesta Group, you mean they worked exactly with Paul Manafort doing the exact same crime? And they're in Italy laughing it up while Manafort sits in solitary confinement? Brennan could go to Congress and blatantly lie. Clapper could lie and say, the NSA doesn't willingly collect information about U.S. citizens. All of that stuff, the stuff that Snowden told us, all of that stuff's public about the spying on the American people. We now know It's public knowledge that we're arming places like Al-Nusra and ISIS in Syria. All of this is public knowledge, and there's not a public outcry. Could you ask for a better benefit if you're the deep state? Great. That's why I say, if not now, then never. If they're not held accountable now, when it's been so transparent, then this is the end of our republic. It's already bad enough. The average person has so little of a voice already, but what little shred of voice they have is gone. Now, what's the other case I said? You want an example of a serious case that's even easier to explain than all of this? Because that's the other thing. It's just like the financial crisis. The 2008 financial collapse. What happened there? Well, it had a lot to do with mortgage-backed securities, and they were bundling. We had AAA-rated securities, but they were bundled with... that's hard for people to understand. Here's what's easy to understand. You were scammed by crooks in the banking industry. That doesn't mean every banker's a crook, but there were tons of them that were. And what they did was they gambled and they lied and they packaged investments and mortgages and things like that and lied and said that these were great mortgages. They would be paid back when they knew they weren't. They were risky because they're giving mortgages to people that they knew didn't even make enough money to make the basic payments back. And when that worked for them and when they were getting the investments, they reaped all the benefits. And then when it lost, because people realized how crooked and how shady it was, the government bailed them out. They socialized losses. That means you paid for their losses. But when they got gains, did you gain? No, they gained. That's it. That's the story. Yeah, you can get into the specifics, but people get lost in that. It's the same here. So let's do a real simple story. What was the other story that I said was the biggest story that was going on? The Epstein situation. I can't believe even people, Trump supporters, I saw with this Epstein. I did several videos on this. When was this? August? I was infuriated by this situation. And I had even some people that are Trump supporters telling me, it's cool, the FBI will still get to the bottom of it. Please. So here's what we were told, right? Here's what we knew prior to this week. We were told that Epstein tried to kill, this is the official narrative, Epstein tried to kill himself, failed to do so. So he's put on suicide watch. He was taken off suicide watch. The guards fell asleep. There was no camera directly on his cell. And the cameras that were in the hallway in front of his cell, at least two of them, both malfunctioned at the same time. And he was able to kill himself. If you believe that story, you are gullible beyond redemption. Because this wasn't just some Joe Schmo prisoner. This was a person accused of the most heinous crime that you could be accused of. Raping, sexual trafficking of children. And he was connected to the most powerful people in the world. Quite literally, the most important prisoner in the world. The biggest crime, the biggest names connected to that crime. He supposedly tried to kill himself. Now you're telling me at that point that there weren't steps taken by the people leading the investigation, which would be the FBI. And I was told it's not the FBI, it's the Marshal Service and the prison that's responsible. If I was a head FBI agent, and I was actually concerned about outing child sex trafficking, and I thought that this guy had gotten away with it because of his money and influence and powerful connections, as soon as I heard that he was potentially harmed in prison, I would have taken steps personally to say, we are going to have FBI agents sitting here to make sure this guy is safe until the end of this trial. But nope, they didn't care. And the Marshal Service, nope, they didn't care. And the jail, nope, they put their most inept, sleepy guards on it. And then the cameras on top of everything. Oh, 2 cameras just happened to malfunction at the same time. But we were told, right, that The FBI investigators told us it was a suicide. So then what happens is, and people believe this crap. They believed it. This isn't a partisan issue. Epstein had connections to Republicans, to Democrats, to members of the royal family in the UK, scientists, political and royal people all around the world, bankers. So he's dead. The reason that the Epstein case, not just because the crimes are so heinous, and as adults, our number one job in the world should be ensuring the safety of children. Which means that our greatest enemy should be those that seek to be predators against children. So not only is it important on that aspect, but it's also important that this, because it was covered up, because the allegation was that this was covered up, just like the Jimmy Savile thing in the UK. That, yes, there is a chance to get to the deep state through the coup that they're engaged in with Trump and the Russia collusion hoax and the IG report and the Durham investigation. But that's hard for people to understand. But what's real simple for people to understand is that people at the highest levels were protecting known pedophiles, known sexual traffickers of children. That's real simple to understand, even for the average person that doesn't follow the news that often. So in many ways, the Epstein situation, if he would have flipped and given names, had way more potential to be damaging to the deep state than even their coup attempt. But that's all gone. What did I say? Go back and watch my videos. Late August, watch them. I said, within a couple months, it'll be people just like me that'll be the only people talking about it. We'll be on to the next story. What's that? Trump used a Sharpie on a map talking about a hurricane? Huh? Someone photoshopped the dog that got Baghdadi getting a medal around his neck? Yep, that's the important stories. So what happened this week in case you missed it? Well, Epstein's family themselves hired a famous coroner who basically said that Epstein was murdered, that the injuries are not consistent with any suicide he's ever seen. They're consistent with forced strangulation, broken bones, things like that. Now, what does that mean? If that person's telling the truth, if this coroner's telling the truth, how could it be then that the FBI or the investigators that investigated his murder, how could their coroner come to a different conclusion? Because it wasn't that their coroner came to the conclusion, I don't know, maybe it was a murder. They said definitively it's a suicide. Sorry, the medical evidence says it's a suicide. So someone's wrong, either lying or they're criminally inept at their job, one of these two coroners. And which one are you going to believe? The one whose narrative would go inside with, and it just so happened the guards fell asleep, and it just so happened that the cameras malfunctioned at the same time? Or the one that would make that appear suspicious? How isn't this the biggest story in the country right now? Trump's potential quid pro quo, that's a huge story. Not this guy that had connections to the Clintons, that had connections to the British royal family. It's almost like, now hear me out in this. This is going to sound mind-blowing, right? But it's almost like the media people that also have connections to the Clintons and to all these wealthy politicians and all these scientists and all these Hollywood people and the British royal family. It's like they don't have connections with each other, and so they don't have an incentive to talk about news that could be damaging to themselves. Huh, isn't that strange? Interesting. That's our media. That's our press. That's the moral Democrats, right? Me too. Don't you? Construction workers catcalling a woman walking down the street. That's a big story. The song Baby It's Cold Outside, thank God John Legend's rewriting it to be more about consent. But raping of children, sex trafficking, being connected to the people that control the media, the people that control the entertainment industry, the people that control our government, no big deal. Nothing to see here. Of course they have connections to Epstein. Katie Couric went to Epstein's dinner party after he was let out of jail for pleading guilty to sexual improclivities with children, underagers. I won't judge someone if they were hanging out with Epstein before he pled guilty to having sex with children. Because you don't know. And I get it. When you're at that level and you're hobnobbing with billionaires, you're probably hobnobbing with people that have done crappy things. You don't know. I get it. Even if you heard rumors, you don't know. But once the guy pled guilty, and then Prince Andrew decides to have a get-out-of-jail birthday party for him, and Katie Couric shows up, how is that defensible? I get it if you're his family. And I know what you're saying. His crimes were so heinous, what he was accused of, that no one should hang out with him. Yes, I agree. But I won't judge a family member for standing by a beloved relative, even if they've done something heinous. But Prince Andrew wasn't family. Katie Couric wasn't family. So many people were connected to Epstein. I'm not saying all of them were involved in what he was doing. But some probably were. And certainly, all of them want the story to go away. They don't want their connections to be known. They don't want it to be talked about. Epstein's dead. It was a suicide. Nice, neat bundle. Moving on. That's the quality of our media. That's the quality of... These are the lies that are spoon-fed you. The same people that are spoon-feeding you this garbage. That the cameras malfunction. That Epstein committed suicide. Nothing to see here, folks. Only conspiracy theories would think otherwise. The same people are saying Trump needs to be impeached. Or pulling out of Syria is a huge, colossal mistake. They're not interested in the truth. They're propagandists. And nothing will be done. You want another, you want to have a real pessimistic outlook on this video today? I talk about this all the time. In the UK, it has now become public knowledge that for 3 decades, children in towns no bigger than, I live outside Pittsburgh, 2 hours away from Pittsburgh. Villages in the UK, smaller than Pittsburgh. For 3 decades, each of these villages, not all in the UK, but many of them, several, thousands of underage girls groomed. What's grooming? Sexually raped, gang raped, sometimes hundreds of times, by Pakistani Muslim gangs. 3 decades. And it is now an admission by the government of the UK and by the local governments in these areas, in almost every single situation, that the police knew for 3 decades, that the local government knew for 3 decades. Thousands of girls raped for 30 years. I don't give a shit what the ethnicity was of the people doing it. There is a problem. There's a discussion to be had about some forms of Islam encouraging this. And certainly, the victims said that they used the Quran and they used their religion as reason for it. But that's not what I'm talking about here. 3 decades of little girls being raped, targeted for their ethnicity. The local police and politicians knew. And what did they do about it? Nothing. Because they're afraid of being called racist. Now, this is public knowledge. This isn't a conspiracy theory. Has one of those police officers or one of those local politicians gone to prison? Are there riots on the street? For little girls being gang raped by up to 50 people at a time for 30 years? Nothing. What did the people of the UK do? Well, they got pissed about Tommy Robinson, who was one of the only people out there shouting about it. He deserved to be in prison. They made sure he went. And I get it. Well, he broke their actual specific laws and this and that. I don't give a shit. If you're a person there and you have more contempt for him than you do for the actual rapist and the public officials that allowed it, you're disgusting. So what chance do we have in this country of anything being different? A coup? Who gives a shit? That's nothing. Epstein went down? Who cares? Gang rape all the kids. No one cares. It's unbelievable. I don't even live in the UK. Why am I more passionate about it than the people there? Imagine if my local police sheriff, the chief of police, right, was like, oh, by the way, I knew for 20 years that there was a local gang raping kids, but I didn't want to say anything about it because I was afraid it'd make me look bad. There is no way I would allow that chief to go to work the next day. None! I don't care if I get arrested. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm not special. I don't have a greater moral compass than other people. I'm not more intelligent. Yeah, I mean, Rational, you're absolutely right. That happened. Labor leaders were saying that these girls consented. Reports were over and over again that the girls, sometimes as young as 12, 13, would be taken in and charged with consuming alcohol, while the people that forcibly got her drunk or drugged and gang raped her were not charged. And yes, where did these people, the people that got fed, what would you do if you lived in one of these towns, right? You live there and you know that these gang rapes are going on. You call the police arrest your daughter. There are reports I heard this one guy say, I saw an interview with him, who said, and this is difficult to even talk about, he was called by the grooming gangs while they were raping his daughter, and they put it on speakerphone for him to hear it. As a father, I'm not a father. I know what that makes me want to do. What would you do if that was your daughter? So they call the police. The police treat you like the criminal. Then some group like the EDL comes along. Finally, someone who's standing up for you. Oh, but there were bad people connected to the EDL, which I'm sure there were. I know there were. But what are you going to do? That's where we're at in this country, too, on a different level. They push and push and push and push and push and push and push. They take away your rights. They take away your livelihood. You're wrong. You're a scumbag. You're evil. You're immoral. The other people are right. LeBron James thinks you suck, but China's great. Your light bulbs and your iron that you're using, they use too much electricity, says the Hollywood elite that flies around in his jet. You need to take more people that look different and have different beliefs than you into your community, says the politicians living in gated communities. Over and over and over. And then when you snap, when you push back, you're the bad person. I'm not advocating any violence. I'm against all political violence, have been from the get-go. But it's time we start putting people up there that have an actual voice, that have actual passion to be able to defend against this crap instead of the inept buffoons that we're sending. And I don't care if it's on the left or the right. One sec. It's just, it's unbelievable to me. 5 minutes on Jake Tapper's show, I'd make him look like a fool. Wouldn't have to raise my voice. I do here. But I wouldn't have to. So, yeah, that's where we're at, you know. What else is happening? Just a couple more things. I'll probably be 20 more minutes, then I'm done. You know, Baghdadi gets killed, the leader of ISIS. The media is upset about it. The Democrats are upset about it. Trump's language talking about his killing is bad. They have worse things to say about Trump talking about killing Baghdadi than they did about ISIS in the first place. Unintentionally, they call him an Islamic scholar, an austere Islamic scholar. Oh, wait a minute, I thought ISIS had nothing to do with Islam. They bend over backwards constantly to defend violent terrorists on their side. Antifa, right? They'll defend the Antifa over and over again. Well, yeah, the violence is bad, but, you know, their heart's in the right place. You mean that guy that tried to firebomb the ICE facility? You mean you guys calling them Nazis? ICE agents Nazis? And the facility's concentration camps? And those people that are beating people with bike locks and doing all kinds of heinous things, those are the people that they're doing the right thing. You don't see anyone. You don't see one Republican defending neo-Nazis. You don't see them defending the KKK. But we constantly see it with the left, the Democrat, and the media. Farrakhan was okay, and Antifa's okay. And ISIS isn't that bad. They're not really about Islam, you know. He's an austere religious scholar. They hate America. They hate it. They hate Trump, of course. They hate Trump more than anything. But the reason is Trump, look, you know, Gavin McInnes talks about this with Tommy Robinson, right? What is it that they hate about Tommy? It's not just that he's outing their corruption. It's a class thing. Tommy talks like a hooligan. He talks like a lower class person. That's the same reason they would hate me. It's why they hate Trump. It is a class thing. Even though Trump has the money and the wealth, he's considered low class, low brow. They don't like that. They don't like the working class that spends their 9 to 5 working and then goes to the bar for a beer. They don't like people that smoke. They don't like regular people that want to watch football or that play softball on the weekends or throw horseshoes. They don't like that. They're in a different elite bubble. They think you suck. Trump's the avatar of that. He's like our comic book character. Our superhero of epitomizing all these things they hate. But they hate America too. They do. They don't hate the trees and the hills. They hate the idea of American exceptionalism. They hate the idea of a national sovereignty and national borders. They want global governance where they're in control. They're always for more power, more consolidation of power, and them at the helm of it. Never anyone else at the helm of it. They'll blow a gasket and say Trump should be impeached if he asks a foreign country to investigate the previous administration. But when they ask a foreign country to investigate, that's perfectly fine without batting an eye. That's legitimate. That's what they want. They hate this country. Hate it. They think if you're voting for borders, you're racist. You're a scumbag. They think if you think America's the greatest country in the world, you're somehow terrible. And they'll lie about it. They'll give lip service to, oh, I love the flag. I love our troops. I love this. I love that. But they don't. They're seething. They think that America's guilty. They're social justice warriors. They're cultural Marxists. They think that if you're American, you're an oppressor. And all the other countries in the world that are against America, they're great. Or organizations like ISIS, you know, yes, they're not going to defend when they rape someone. They won't come right out and say that. But they like that they're challenging the United States. They think there must be in something inherently good. That's their gut feeling. U.S. is bad, so anything that's against them must be good. Now, it's not everyone. But how in the hell can you be praising Baghdadi and talking good of him and that not be the conclusion? How can you be for open borders and that not be the conclusion? How can you say that 50% of the electorate in this country is racist and that not be the conclusion? I despise the establishment, deep state loving people, predominantly in the Democrat Party, but also some of them in the Republican Party that control that, right? I have friends with people that vote for them. I don't judge those people, the actual voters, the actual average people. I don't hold them in contempt because they voted for Hillary. I say, okay, well, we disagree, but fine. I don't hear Trump out there saying people that voted for Hillary are deplorable, disgusting, horrible, or that would vote for Biden, or that would vote. Have you ever heard him say that? Yet that's what the Democrats and the media constantly say. It's a whitewash. It's racist. A bunch of racists voted for Trump. 10-tooth. I remember when, what's his name? Rick something from CNN said this. It's supposedly Republican. Yeah, I do wonder why the elite hate us. The elite, the number one impediment to stopping globalism is the middle class, particularly the middle class in the United States, but also in other first and second world countries. Because the idea is this: if you depend, it's almost religious, and I'm not someone who is overly talks about religion a lot. I kind of keep my beliefs to myself. But you can't help but, I remember when I would be in church, and they'd be talking about Revelations, and there was this idea of the number of the beast. And like, there was all kinds of, as a kid, it's like, wait, well, if you knew that, why would you get 666 tattooed in your hand if you know you're going to burn in hell for eternity? And it was like, well, it won't be that simple. Maybe it'll be a microchip, or maybe you can't engage in commerce without that number, right? But the idea of it is this, that you're willing to accept evil, or you're willing to accept kind of slavery or not having a voice if your sustenance depends on it, right? So in the religious narrative, if you literally can't get food and you would starve unless you accept this metaphorical number, then you would probably accept it. That's why the middle class is an impediment, because they could be self-sufficient. And what the elites want, and I mean like what the Silicon Valley, the Zuckerbergs want, what the politicians want, what the EU wants, what all these globalists want, what they want is them to be extremely wealthy and live in their little bubble, and everyone else to be incredibly dependent on them. In reality, what they want is San Francisco and LA. That's what they want. That is their ideal. It is serfdom. It's feudalism. They live in their high tower. They live in the castle on the hill, and we all live around them and say, please give us bread. And so they have contempt for us that seek to want to do things on our own. Most people I know don't give a lick about politics. They just want to go to their job. They want to have their family. They want to do what they do for entertainment. And they basically want to be left alone. And that's the way it should be. That's how I feel. Now, I take an interest in politics, and I happen to be good at kind of the ideas behind it. But you basically just want to be left alone. And that's the biggest impediment to their agenda. They don't think they're evil. The globalists, the elites, they don't think they're terrible, evil people. They just think they're better than you. Some of them might even think that you're a poor baby that needs protected. They're like anthropologists that are going into, the jungle, and they find some tribe that's never met the outside world. Oh, you poor babies, let's help protect you. And those that refuse the protection, well, then you have to be eliminated. We don't want you. That's what we are to them. They want everything from you. Everything. They don't just want your wealth. Of course, they want that. They want you to grovel to them. That's why, and Jordan Peterson talks about this. Have you ever wondered why you could go to a campus like Yale? By any account, if you're at Yale, I don't care what you did to get there, you are in the top 1% of privileged people in the world, right? Yet they're claiming victimhood status. Watch the videos. The Halloween costumes. You don't understand. This is our lives. This is our homes. You can't have people dressed up like Native Americans. That video exists. Why is that? Because what do the elite have? They got the resources, the wealth, the connections, right? They don't have to worry about day-to-day bills. They're not living paycheck to paycheck. What do you have? What does the person have that has that? They got the right to complain about their situation. That's it. Or the right to be self-sufficient, which most are. That's what comedy's been about. That's why this idea of eliminating hate speech and criminalizing comedy, right? It's not just about criminalizing, it's about winning the cultural war that says you're not allowed to joke about certain things. That's why memes about Hillary needed to be gone after. You can't have fun. You can't joke. They have to go after comedy. Kudos to Dave Chappelle and others for standing up to that. But comedy, like people have said, inside every joke is a tiny revolution. Comedy has always been used from those that aren't in the upper class to be able to criticize those that are. Even if you read Shakespeare, the fool, the jester, right? Oftentimes, one of the better characters, one of the more knowledgeable characters, even in Shakespeare plays. Because they're the only one, through comedy, they're able to legitimately criticize those with power over them and get away with it. That's what it's about, that criticism. And they know this too, the elites know this. Because they take the criticisms of the bottom very seriously, or at least they pretend to. Because those people, the people that can't subsist on their own merit, whether through some fault of their own or not, they'll take their criticism. So, for example, the trans community. Well, the trans community, there's not enough numbers to be able to influence change without the elites being on their side. So that's what happened. But the trans community is no threat to the elites at all. They just force it down your throat. Again, my feelings on trans, you want to be trans? I don't care. I'd still be friends with you. Means nothing to me. Once you start demanding all sorts of things like, you should be allowed to use whatever restroom you want. You should be allowed to compete in any competition you want. You should get the benefits of what the sex that you're claiming to be are. That's all nonsense. That's the stuff I'm criticizing. So they understand that, the ability, there's power in the ability to criticize. But they have to take that away from you. That's the very core of who you are. That's what they're after. You get nothing. They want all the power and all the wealth, and they want the ability to criticize all the power and all the wealth. You get nothing. You get to rely on them. Pray to them, worship them. That's what you get. Be thankful that they might be willing to throw you bread, as long as you agree with them. If you're against them, well, then the gloves are off. That's what it's about. They don't like seeing that people that haven't backstabbed and spent their entire life trying to gain more money and power can be happy. They could be self-sufficient. They'd have good quality lives. They hate that. You need to rely on them. That's what's going on. So, that's at least my feeling. But, every day we see a new, even me, with the Baghdadi thing, even I was shocked. That's how far we've come, that you could just blatantly, the Washington Post could be like, austere religious scholar. LeBron could blatantly be pro-China. It's mind-boggling. Right, and then that's the other thing. The elite do want population control. They've been arguing that for years. It's Malthusian, right? The famous scientist Malthus talked about this. That, we're going to run out of resources. And by the way, what goes hand in hand with that? Well, this radical environmentalism. There's very much similarities between what we see the elite globalists doing and what Charles Manson said. Because Charles Manson was, in addition to all the other things he was a racist, and he thought black people were inferior. Right? And he said his idea, he called it Helter Skelter, which was weirdly inspired by the Beatles song. It's worth reading the book Helter Skelter, by the way. It was written by Manson's prosecutor, a guy by the name of Bugliosi. It's a really good book. But anyways, and by the way, Manson wrote songs with the Beach Boys. I digress. The idea of Helter Skelter was there would be a big race war, and that blacks were dumber, but they would ultimately win because they're physically superior. But then they would realize that they're too stupid to exist, and so he would then come along and be their leader. That was his idea. Now, take the racial component out of it to a large extent. And that's what I see the elites. The elites are like, look, we're fostering cultural wars. We want things like open borders. We want open hostility. They're all for things like gang violence and things like that. They're all for it. They're for groups that are labeled marginalized. They're setting up that conflict with the groups that aren't marginalized, and they want there to be a conflict because they want the, quote, marginalized groups to win so they can say, yes, you're victims. Yes, you're special. You can do no wrong. You have no personal agency. You're just babies. And you've just been victims your entire life, and we'll take care of you. And it's those evil others. They're the evil people. That's how you can see, Tucker talked about this 2 days ago. I saw a show. AOC's talking on a climate change panel in Capitol Hill, in Congress. Isn't it true that most of the victims of climate change are people of color? Yes. And isn't it true that most of the people benefiting from destroying the climate are white people? How could you say that? What does the skin color matter? AOC's one of those people. By the way, why doesn't she mention herself? You don't think AOC's benefiting? AOC uses more energy. Her footprint's larger than mine. Remember when they found out she wasn't taking the subway to work and she said, well, you know, all of them, they all fly in jets and all that crap. Well, it's different for us. But it's those evil white people. They did it. Yeah, and I mean, you're absolutely right, Rational. Right? Like, it's claimed that LBJ said, I'll have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 100 years. Right? When he started his war on poverty. And I talk about this all the time. In the 60s, there was a report commissioned by a Democrat called the Moynihan Report. And it said that it was a national travesty that 25% of black children were born out of wedlock. That number is closer to 75% today. It's not just black families. With white families, it's over 50%. And we can see that one of the greatest indicators of living a successful life is, were you raised in a two-parent household? Here's the 3 indicators that show that you'll have a pretty successful life. If you were raised in a two-parent household, if you graduate from high school, and if you have a full-time job, your chances of being in prison, of being homeless, of being a drug addict, plummet. It's the number one indicator, those 3 things. And so what better way to make an entire population of people compliant to you than to encourage single-parent families? That's exactly, regardless if it was intentional or not, and I truly believe to some people it was intentional. I believe there were people that thought they were doing the right thing. But now when I say, look, these policies have been a disaster. Look at inner city Chicago or Baltimore. Can you really say since the war on poverty policies that things have gotten better there? And they just say, no, we need to increase those policies. Give more money. Now we need reparations as well, and we need to do this and that. Yeah, Stalin did say that. That was the strongest thing. And again, what made the United States the greatest country in the world? It was the first country that codified the importance of the individual, right? And it made that into law. That's what our Constitution is about. That's what all the people that were first coming here was about. They just wanted to be left alone. They didn't want huge government. They wanted as small and as limited a government as possible. And to that extent, they wanted their local government to have much more influence in their lives than the state government, and then the state to have more influence than the national government. That was the idea, right? Well, along with that, when you talk about the individual, you're also talking about the nuclear family. That's the group that means the most to us in life, and that is absolutely true. That means more than anything. Who you are as a person and who your family is more important than anything. And so if you could replace government with the nuclear family and make everyone reliant on the government, now you've made the world of 1984. You're reliant, just like when you were a child, you were reliant on your parents for sustenance. Now you rely, as even an adult child, for the government for sustenance. And it's not just right-wing people that say this, right? Like, even postmodernists that I despise, like Michel Foucault. Foucault talked about the idea of biopower. And by no means am I a postmodernist scholar, so forgive me if I'm oversimplifying or misinterpreting this, but I believe this is basically what's going on. The idea of biopower in a nutshell is this. If you give the government the power to give you life, you also give the government the power to take away your life. So it's like a light switch. Okay, you rely on the government for food or for your education or for this and that, but then all the government has to do is flip that switch off, and now you're screwed. You know, many of the postmodernists were skeptical also of massive government control. It's just that the elites learned how to use their philosophy and fill the vacuum, because a lot of that philosophy has to do with nihilism. There is no truth. So how is it that postmodernists become Marxist? Well, it just doesn't make sense. It contradicts itself on face value. But it doesn't matter. It's like a grift in the system that they've learned to pick up on. And so it's all about this collectivist, globalist idea. And you see it at the highest level. Remember, Obama said, you didn't do anything yourself. The government did it. The government built the roads that allowed you to be a success. The government gave you all sorts. So you didn't earn your success because of you. you're relying on other people. And it seems harmless enough to think that, but it's actually very nefarious. Oh yeah, the founding fathers, it would have never have got this. They knew. I mean, they'd said things like you should have a revolution every 20 years. They said that things like the bank was more of a threat than any foreign invader. That's what I've been saying. Take that, you know, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI. They're more of a threat. Them meddling in our election is 100 times more severe than anything any foreign country could meddle in our election about. The most powerful investigative agencies in the history of the world, with the power to totally wipe out all of your Bill of Rights. Your right to privacy gone. They could throw you in prison. Uh-oh, someone might be here. So, but yeah, that's about. I gotta end it here soon, anyways. But that's about all I have. But yeah, I'm gonna be putting more videos out daily. I know a couple people talked about emailing me. I'll put my email up again, but it's real simple. It's just my name, rob.noor@gmail. And feel free to email me if there's anything I could do to help you. I know there's a guy I'm supposed to talk to today, which I'll have to get to him here later because I went a little longer than I wanted. But I'm trying my best, and I recommend that all of you try your best as well. And look, one of the beautiful things about the idea of capitalism and humanity is we're all good at certain things. Maybe you're not good at talking and doing videos. If you are, do videos. You know, talk to people in your life, the people connected to you, about how corrupt this is and what's going on. If you can't do that, if you're making a lot of money and you need to donate to people, don't give me money. You don't have to donate me money, but give money to someone you think is doing a good job to try to make this country what it should be. You know, if you do music or something, use that. If you do art, use that. But if you could run for office, do that. But we all need to be doing something. None of us is special, in the sense that one person's going to come along and fix everything. It's not going to happen. You know, so we all need to stand up, continue to research, continue to listen to diverse points of view. Don't listen to just me. Don't take my word for stuff. But, you know, I don't know what else to do. We're not going to change things at this point if it's not at a grassroots level. I mean, it is clear that the people running the, yeah, that's right, you are rational. It's clear that even the people that we're voting for that supposedly are on our side, where's Lindsey Graham? He'll go on Fox every night. Oh, this coup attempt. This is terrible. This is terrible. What's he ever do about it? Nothing. Nothing at all. So, I mean, I guess it's up to us. So, but look forward to me to be putting out more stuff. I'd really appreciate if you haven't already to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at NorRobert at Twitter. And I'm on BitChute as well, because who knows when YouTube will take me down. And please, I would ask you, you know, share my stuff if you have Twitter followers or whatever. If I'm doing a live stream, like, share it. I'm trying to get enough people so I could get noticed, at least to like talk to some local radio stations and see if I could get onto something like that, or to get noticed by local people in the Republican Party. Because every time I talk to them, they're like, wow, we like what you say. Wow, you know, you have ideas behind this. We got this great idea for you. And I'm like, okay, what can I do to help? Can you put up yard signs? And it's like, yeah, I'm not above putting up yard signs. And I'm willing to do that. I don't need to be the person that's the face of anything. I don't need that. I just want someone to be the face. I want the person that we put up there to actually be doing their job and trying to save this country from the coup. So, I mean, it's frustrating for me because at the same time all this is going on, I'm trying to work 80, 90 hours a week. You know, I've never once asked for money, and until I would get a bigger show, I'm not going to set up a Patreon or anything like that. So I'm just asking if you could get this, or, you know, help spread my channel, help spread my channel, and, you know, any help that you can give in that aspect would be great. So thank you, everyone. And again, sorry for the past couple weeks. I've kind of been MIA, and look forward to me putting up new stuff soon. So we'll see, everyone. Have a good one.